Hello, welcome to Flap TV. Our guest this episode, Derek Strazdas on the left and Charles Milhans on the right. Issue 1, 2 mass shootings over the weekend. Some blame inadequate firearm laws. Some blame Donald Trump for stoking the fires of racial division with his rhetoric. Some blame lack of access to mental health services. And some blame a generation raised without proper discipline. What is the answer as these mass shootings go on, Cindy?
I think it's a little bit of everything. I don't think there's one thing that you can just put your finger on and say. I think there needs to have a serious conversation with everybody involved, all sides coming together and trying to figure out the cause of it before you can get to a solution.
Derek?
I think we have, as Cindy said, it's a multiple problems. Right now we do have the access to all these weapons, and we do have a heightened nationalism problem. I think that is because of rhetoric, but we also can't just blame guns. I don't think that going after people's guns is the right solution. I think that's going to embolden people to be even more erratic. We do have this problem with nationalism, and it's not just guns. We saw in Portland, Oregon, we saw someone attack 2 people, ended up dying for defending 2 women that were being harassed by a man with a knife. We saw in Charlottesville, we saw if people want to hurt people, they will hurt people. Heather Heyer lost her life that day. She didn't need to lose her life that day. People were chanting, "Jews will not replace us" in the streets. It's not just a problem with guns. We have a problem with nationalism. We have a problem with the rhetoric that's being put out there. And we have a problem with, a lot of people will tell me that the Founding Fathers did not anticipate these weapons of war. Well, I disagree. I don't think that it had to do with the type of gun. I think it has to do with the Founding Fathers never anticipated social networking. And that is where we have this boldened nationalism that is really causing issues with the availability and the accessibility of guns.
Charlie?
I agree with the 2 other people. I think it's multiple things. I think this time you just happen to have 3 things happen similarly. At the same time, but it seems the circumstances with the different people were different with it.
Michael?
Well, I hate to sound like everybody else, but everybody else giving a sensible answer. It is a little bit all of the above. And I do see we have an unfortunate rise of white nationalism here that is an undercurrent with a lot of these attacks, whether it be by firearms or whether it be by other means. It doesn't help. Now, my own personal theory is that unlike some on my side, so to speak, I don't think this president is particularly enamored with white nationalists or segregationists or racial superiority or any of that thing, but he sees it as a means to an end, and I think that he lets those people do his bidding for him, and he sees it as a political opportunity. So yes, the rhetoric is higher, and I do blame this president for it.
Isn't that even worse if he knows, if he doesn't have those, if you're saying he doesn't have those beliefs themselves, but he incites people that he knows do and knows what they're capable of? Isn't that even worse?
Absolutely, because it's one thing if you're David Duke and you just, you're raised a certain way and you have these ingrained beliefs and maybe you don't recognize they're wrong. On some level, he recognizes this is wrong and he does it because it helps him win. So
why not outright denounce him? He had people screaming, "Jews will not replace us" in the streets of Charlottesville, and his son-in-law didn't say, hey, I'm not cool with this. That is a moment where he should have said something. That's a moment where Trump goes and he blames mental illness. Well, you can look at February 28, 2017. He signed a bill that took restrictions from people with mental illness from getting guns. He also recently blamed this mental illness, but he's the one trying to take Medicare, which is our #1 provider for mental illness care. Why is he not trying to attack mental illness and trying to defeat this problem that we have, and then he blames it for these other problems that he has? He will not denounce and he will not admit fault in any case. He should have gone down to the border and he should have said, "I accept fault in this," and that's what he needed to do, and he did not do it.
I have a question for Charlie and Cindy, because you two are Trump supporters, are conservatives. So when you say it's a little bit of all of the above, so if it's mental health and access to mental health services, but Republicans, and you've been pretty clear that you oppose universal health care, access to universal health care. If it's partly access to guns, you have come out in opposition to to gun legislation. So, but we see the proliferation of these mass shootings. So if you're against access to health care, if you're against laws regarding firearms, if you're against the red flag laws for people that may have mental illnesses that have guns, what are you for in order to stop it?
I'm not,
and not denouncing.
Yeah.
Not denouncing your president, continuing to support a president who is really inflaming this.
Well,
What do you support?
first of all, no, that's not true, because I have called Trump out on many things. Many things I've called him out, and some people will recognize that, some refuse to acknowledge that. There's a lot of things that he says and does that I do not approve. So to say that I'm a Trump supporter, I voted for Trump. I have my days where I may support him. I have days where I don't, because I think, you know, some of the things he does is ludicrous, and it's so I'm not 100% behind him going, yeah, I agree with everything he says and does. So let's clarify that.
But even disagreeing on individual issues, if still at the end of the day that he gets a vote and he gets a support, that enables him.
Well, yeah, but I'm not convinced that I'm going to vote for him next time around. You know, so I mean, you can't say that. That's a year away, and trust me, my thoughts go everywhere. I'm watching everybody on this campaign trail to see where I land, and I haven't decided on him.
Okay, so if it's
as far as this issue
health,
here,
what do we do?
Universal health, I believe everybody should have access to health care. I do not believe in the government running the entire healthcare system to where we have to pay for everybody equally across the board. I think people should have to contribute to that. There's a couple people. There's a couple new candidates that are running on what they call it universal health care, but they would keep Medicare for senior citizens. Everybody would be eligible to get into the universal health care, but if you didn't, you could get a tax break and you provide your own health care. I'm all for that. So if everybody want to pool your money in and into this fund, and you join in, you go for it. I'll pay for my own.
So Medicare for all with but it's voluntary.
Yes.
So it sounds like Vice President Biden is who you're talking about, and Amy Klobuchar.
I haven't read his yet. This was a couple other candidates that I aligned with. I did some of those online things, and then I started looking up their issues, and I align actually better with a few Democrats than I do the conservatives. So I'm looking at all options, and I'm open. I'm open.
So anyway, to answer your question,
yes.
There are some good bills before Congress. Senator Pat Toomey and Senator Joe Manchin this week put together a bipartisan bill that covers the red flag issue. I'm in favor of that, as long as you don't. There's a check on it, that somebody doesn't get red flagged and they can't prove themselves that they're not. It was a false charge anyway, so that looks pretty good. There's a couple other bills. The Democrats have a bill which will go from 3 days to 10 days waiting. I think that's a little, I don't think that's a solution. But I am in favor of doing background checks on people.
For private sales? Because we already do background checks on all.
There's personal sales they don't do, and they also don't do at some gun shows and things. Right. They don't do that, so that's okay with me. I think it needs a bigger discussion. I think Governor Greg Abbott has put things this week. He's getting people together. It doesn't look like a whitewash type of thing. He's been talking to people, trying to get groups. I've been looking at some mental health things with the shooters. Turns out 27 of the last 28 mass shooters are male, and they don't have a father figure, when they grew up. There's certain profiles that it doesn't mean everybody without a
social issue,
but that they can profile so they can pick some of these people up. But you see, Dayton, Ohio, they shot the guy in 30 seconds. Yeah. They had police right there, and I don't know what else the police could have done with that shooter.
So that begs the question: if he took out that many people in 30 seconds, before they took him on, 30 seconds is a pretty quick time to take someone down. Is it time to look at high-capacity magazines? Is it time to look at what some describe as assault weapons, AR-15s? Is it time to look at those kind of weapons?
I mean, the AR-15s, I understand, and the common talking point among conservatives, NRA members, gun manufacturers, Yes, an AR-15 is a semi-automatic, much like a common pistol can be a semi-automatic. It can have a magazine that holds 10 rounds, just like a pistol that can hold 10 rounds. However, I think we are ignoring the fact that AR-15s in general are easier to aim, they're easier to load, and I think when you start to address those sort of things, you are working along the periphery. We started off on this issue by saying that it's all four that contribute to this underlying issue. And so, yes, I do think it's time to, and I've always been in favor of this. I favor a Massachusetts type system when it comes to Second Amendment rights, and others feel that it's too restrictive. Okay, great minds can agree on that. At the same time, there is a middle ground where we start to put a ceiling on some of these things, where we start to look at firearms such as the AR-15 to see, well, if indeed there are some common factors there. Charlie talked about common factors. Well, maybe we ought to look at some of those common factors, and if we can pass legislation that puts some sort of a soft ceiling on things, it's not going to eliminate the problem. That's not the purpose of a law, is to prevent a problem. The purpose of a law is to suffocate a problem enough so that it doesn't mushroom like it has.
But what if we began by saying, okay, red flag law, yeah, that's a good idea. Saying we're having them wait 10 days, yeah, that's a good idea. But let's say we get a year's data. We pass these things, we get universal across the states. We pass these things and we look what happens over a year's time. We see if it actually does make a difference before we go and say we're coming after these weapons. These weapons shouldn't be available to people. Let's get the data. Let's make sure that we know that we're doing the right thing before we embolden people that do not want to give up these guns.
Just for clarification on the 3-day waiting versus the 10-day waiting, this isn't a waiting period like just you have to wait after you purchase a gun. What that is currently under federal law, they put in for a background check.
Right.
If the background check does not come back within 3 days, they can go ahead and sell the gun without the background check. The Democrats are looking to extend that to 10 days. Say you have to wait 10 days, and then if the FBI doesn't get back to you, then you can go ahead and sell the gun. So it's not a waiting period on the sale of every gun. In fact, I bought quite a few guns, and that background check is done within an hour. So,
okay. So then the 3-day waiting period doesn't apply.
I don't know if that's anything more than
because
just
most
optics.
of these, I think these last few have all been legally purchased guns.
That's just politics.
So
the other question is, so we have one side screaming, we need less guns, we need less access to guns. On the other side, you have people saying, well, you know what? We have crazy people now. We have social media, we have crazy people. So, and you can measure the time it takes for a mass shooting to stop by the time it takes for the second gun to make its appearance. Mm-hmm. So is the answer less guns, or is the answer to encouraging more people to be their own first responder?
I think that's a good part of it. I have no problems with that.
Yeah. The problem is in El Paso, Texas, an open carry store in an open carry state, where was the good guy with the gun?
You can't stereotype El Paso as all of Texas. El Paso is a deep blue state where Hillary Clinton beat Donald Trump by a greater margin than she did in Massachusetts. Yeah. So
but what are the states in the stores?
But El Paso was a no gun zone in the Walmart, and that no gun zone rule didn't prevent that shooter from going in there.
And we did see in Texas last year, I believe it was, there was a fire, someone started open fire in a church, and there was a good guy with a gun, and he stopped the person that opened fire.
He took him out.
So on both sides, the good guy with a gun theory, it does pan out here and there, but it doesn't always work. And if more people carried guns, we don't know. We'd have to see if that worked, but as of right now, I don't think more guns is the answer.
And when you look at a lot of these shooters, I mean, you look at each one of them after the fact, and there was always warning signs. There was something on their social media where they had made threats. People knew, and that's the thing. What about these people that are around these kids? Because they are mostly kids. They're under 30, most of them, and they're male, and they're angry. They're angry about something, whatever it is, and it's not always politics. It can be a variety of things, and there's signs of it because they'll go back and they look at the social media and they're like, yeah, he's been threatening this.
A lot of them were
months.
also bullied in school.
Yeah,
so
that's true.
I want to ask this question because kids mimic the behaviors of adults, and especially leaders and celebrities. They mimic behavior. Now, if you have a president who wakes up every morning and the first thing he does is go on Twitter and call people names and insult people, and come up with these nicknames: Crooked Hillary, Lion Ted, Little Mario, Little Marco, Sleepy
Pocahontas.
Joe, Pocahontas. What then stops, Four-Eyed Mary or Fat Sally or Gay Charlie, those nicknames being given to kids in school? Because if the president is doing it, why not them? Why not bully? So I want to ask, Charlie, you're a loyal Republican. You always have been. You're a great guy. I know you.
Oh, you are too. All these people here. Yeah.
What do you? Is it time for the president to take ownership and change his behavior in this country, the way he leads?
I'm a big follower of Karl Rove, and he said it many times. Yes, he's over the top.
So when are Republicans going to stand up and tell him to tone it down? Because I haven't seen these Republicans seem to be afraid of getting primaried. When are they going to stand up and say, enough is enough, it's time to tone it down?
Well, I mean, I've heard some commentators. Karl Rove was pretty clear day before yesterday, and he wrote an editorial this week in the Wall Street Journal about that.
But Carl's not running for anything.
Congressmen, senators.
Congressmen and senators. They're the ones, they're leaders. When are they going to stand up? Is it going to happen?
I don't know.
Is it
The
going to
lame
happen?
duck ones do.
I don't see it happening. I see Mitch McConnell just blindly follows whatever Trump says, and he won't bring anything to the floor if Trump says not to, and he's not denouncing him in any manner. So he's just a coward when it comes to Trump.
Well, he agreed to bring the Pat Toomey, Joe Manchin bill, but he's not going to. He's going to do it in the fall. He's not going to call Congress back early.
Right. Yeah.
Background checks, red flag laws. 60 days from now, will we have them on the federal level? Derek?
I don't think so.
I don't think so either.
You'll have something on an extremely watered down level.
It'll be there.
Charlie's right.
I think
It'll
it's going to
there.
be a challenge to get everybody together, because this is something that isn't going to be resolved by the Republicans or just the Democrats. They've got to come together.
It has to be a
do that,
bipartisan.
And the red flag law
Nothing will
can't be written
happen.
like it was in Massachusetts,
Yeah,
which was
that was
really
a
just a trample on
was-
constitutional rights. That was an absolutely
atrocity,
horrible bill.
absolutely.
And once again, thank you, Senator Tran, for standing
I
up
was
for,
going to say, yeah, he
for
was
the
the one that
Constitution.
voted against
He was
that.
the one that had the courage,
Yeah.
and that was
Thank you,
red
Maura,
flags
for
are
pushing that
okay, but
through.
that was an absolutely horrible bill. Now, speaking of the presidential race, there's another side here, the Democratic side. So we've had 2 debates now in the books. We have about 20 candidates. They're probably going to start whittling down very soon as fundraising dries up. What are your takeaways from these debates, and what do you think is the current state of this race, Derek?
The debates were pretty atrocious, I thought. They did not give the right amount of time to people. They ignored people they didn't want to pay attention to.
Yeah.
They let people interrupt far too often. And I did actually appreciate Cory Booker for looking at Biden and saying, I didn't interrupt you. Please don't interrupt me. That was a great moment in the debates. It was a level of respect that was not being given to the other candidates on the stage. I think that a lot of them were silenced, and then other ones that people are trying to push forward were not silenced. And it was pretty obvious, especially with the CNN debate, which was just disastrous. I thought that the balance of people on the stage, it needed to be changed drastically. I think that we had a bunch of moderate candidates and a bunch of progressive candidates duking it out. And I honestly think that Bill Maher has it right when he said that Joe Biden is like non-dairy creamer. It's not always desirable, but sometimes it does the trick. And right now, I think we do need 4 years of a moderate candidate so we can get ourselves back into a position where we can set up for a progressive candidate. But right now is not the time. And to go and attack people based on petty things was really, really destructive to the party entirely.
Charlie, what do you think? Looking at it from the outside, what do you think of the Democratic primary?
Well, I agree with you. It's chaos with 10 people per debate, and then there's 4 people who aren't in the debates, and it's interesting looking at everything. I thought Biden did much better this time than he did on the prior one. He was prepared when Kirsten Gillibrand tried to zing him, and he zinged her back. It seems like a lot of it they prep for a zinger, and they got to be asked the right question, and then they can throw that like Cory Booker did. Well, you're trying to taste the Kool-Aid, but you don't know the flavor, or something like that. You have to get the right thing. So I think that's hitting it. I still think Biden is hard to beat. And of the last debate, Elizabeth Warren grew higher. I was just looking on my iPad. Elizabeth Warren had the highest gain
She did.
From Real Clear Politics as of today. She had the best bang from the debate.
It looks like she's if the battle of the left is between Warren and Sanders, it looks like right now Warren is winning that battle.
And then also it's interesting looking at the losers like Mayor de Blasio. I read something, he went on Fox News, and I read some analysis from somebody I respect, say he went on there because he's pulling 1%. And Democrats have gone, losing. If they go on there to the town halls and stuff, they raise their percentages.
Michael?
Speaking of Elizabeth Warren, her stock has risen in my book. Was not a huge fan, but she reminds me of a horse race where you have this horse who sort of starts in the middle of the pack, isn't flashy, but just sort of steadily just starts to approach the lead. What's
Tonto?
The consistency really is what impresses me about her. Is that she really has again, her stock has risen in my book in terms of her performance overall. I think if she is going to hold down the left plank of the party, I think the party's in actually pretty good shape going forward in these debates. If she's going to occupy the left space and you have some of these moonbats that are sort of pushed out, that's actually a good thing. Okay? I would love to see a policy debate between the likes of Biden, Harris, Warren. That would be really, to me, that would be good television. To me, that would be interesting. I'd be intrigued by that. I mean, the others are just fluff and filler as far as I'm concerned.
Cindy?
I agree. I actually agree with you with that. I'd really love to see them tackle policies, and I haven't seen a lot of that yet. I've seen a lot of there's push and pull because you've got the far left and the center left really pulling, and it's a tug of war there. So obviously, when you think of center, the first person that comes to mind is Biden. So anybody who's going to be a moderate Democrat, I would think might be appealed to Biden. And then you look at the others, and they're a little bit more to the left, and then some are really to the left. So I think that's where you push and pull. So it'd be interesting to see if we could get the top 3 or 4 to really get in there and talk about their policies and what they believe in, what they really want to push for, because that's where that's what they're going to vote on.
My takeaway from these debates is that I think it is great having the far left candidates in there, because my fear was at first that the far left candidates like Warren and Sanders would pull the rest of the field to the left to pander to the primary base. But what we've seen in the first 2 debates is that the center has really held their ground and fought back, and in some cases have gone on the offensive against Sanders' plan and Warren's plans. And it's going to make it that much more difficult for Republicans to paint Joe Biden or Harris, or if someone from that center left gets the nomination, as some crazy socialist.
But
because
what
if
do you
they
think
were
about the media,
fighting
though?
from the left,
Because the media seems to be pushing the far left.
I mean, if listening to Fox News, that's what they'll tell you.
Well, not just Fox.
The interviews on CNN seemed like they were set up.
Yeah, CNN, and every now and then I put it on Morning Joe just for laughs, because I love to laugh on my commute, and I listen to them sometimes, and I'm like, these people are whack, but they're pushing the far left. And
Joe, the former Republican congressman from Sarasota.
Yeah, he's crazy. He's
with this many people on stage, though, how can they even talk about policy?
They
get 30 seconds or less, and unless you're Andrew Yang, who's just going to scream about giving you $1,000, nobody can even put any policy down.
You can't. And then there's the talk. Well, there's too many candidates on stage. But then when you look at it, aren't we far enough out that we can afford to say, okay, we'll let everyone on stage and then wean it out? I mean, this isn't
how many Republican candidates there were.
This isn't the summer of 2020. This is the summer.
I mean,
of
but you guys
2019.
exceeded that. I think we had 16.
We had 16 to start out.
Yeah, and then we're over 20, aren't we?
24 or 25, I think.
Yeah.
I think with Tom Steyer, it goes up to 25.
You're going to see some dropout.
Oh,
you'll
very
see
soon.
that.
You already saw
just a matter of time.
Swalwell.
And you'll
dropped out.
probably only have 7 to 10 qualify for the next debate. And the ones who don't qualify for the next debate, their fundraising is going to dry right up, and they'll be done.
Yeah.
What I don't know what's going to happen, I ask you guys because you're more sympathetic to the crowd. I don't see Joe Biden going for any interviews.
No.
He's avoiding the press. I don't know eventually if they're going to start calling him on the carpet or not. He doesn't go for interviews.
I think
I
he
saw him
already
on
knows that
CNN
he's
today,
the center
yeah.
candidate. I think he's secure in that position, and so in his mind, and his crew is probably saying, "There's no need to do interviews right now. Let's weed out the candidates."
Well, he
and
only
that
has something to lose because 90%, it seemed like 90% of the zingers were people attacking Joe Biden
Yeah.
or asking him
Well,
questions.
I do think that Tulsi Gabbard actually kind of put Kamala Harris in her place quite
That
well.
was good, yeah.
That was a great moment.
I
And
loved
when
it.
Michael said he'd like to see Harris in that mix of the three. I'd actually take Harris out and I'd put Tulsi
Oh,
Gabbard in
she's
there.
awful. I can't stand her.
I
She's
know.
so rude.
I think well, she
was
is.
so-
you know?
she was just rude and just. I saw her in an
Oh,
interview the
Kamala
next day.
Harris.
I want
Come on, I
left,
loved it.
center,
I
left,
loved it.
center, not far left, loony left. No, that's just
No.
going to pull you too much to the left.
Where is Harris, by the way? I mean, is she? I can't figure out if she's center, she's center left, sometimes far left.
I think she's wherever you
I would
want
say
her to be.
overall she's
Yeah.
center left. I would say
I would say-
overall.
But
Yeah,
then
I
you
love
look at her
her.
policies, and she's very far left on certain things.
on certain things,
Yeah.
but not on everything.
Right.
Pete Buttigieg, Mayor Buttigieg is another one that seems to be more in that centrist.
Well, it's hard to tell because he doesn't want to talk about policy.
Yeah.
He's very great. He's a shiny new object, but let's hear what you
Yeah,
have to stand
yeah.
for because that's not going to last for too long.
Yeah. Well, you know, as a mayor, and I think he understands that as a mayor, as a chief executive, this isn't like being a senator or a congressman where you
yeah.
can just make fancy speeches and vote yes or no. You actually have to do things and come up with solutions, and that means not being so partisan. That means coming to the table and looking for the right solution rather than the partisan solution. So, yeah, he's not gonna
Well-
parrot out a bunch of policies that he knows that going in he's not going to be able to get through. He's going to say, hey, who's the one that can bring people together to get him through? And that's
As
that
a
could be
mayor
pretty
and as a
good
chief executive, I think he really blew it when he did not fire that officer, and he really needed to a month and a half ago. That really kind of stomped him down. But then you see his second quarter, he did $25 million in fundraising, so it's really hard to say. Right now, he's polling at 0% with African Americans, and is this what is the reason? Probably because he doesn't have any policy. He's not a safe bet, and Biden's a safe bet, and he's polling very well.
But he has a personality that connects with people, though, doesn't
He does, and I think
Young,
that it would be
he's a new
very interesting to
generation.
see him speak
Is
against
he
Trump.
out of this yet? Would you count him out yet? Pete
Buttigieg?
Buttigieg? Yeah.
No.
I mean, no, but I mean, he's definitely a long shot, but he started as a long shot.
Right.
I'd say a medium long shot who has really sunk, okay, because you talk about Warren kind of just rising with the tide a little bit. Someone who's really sunk is Mr. Robert O'Rourke. I think this guy went from a couple of points away from beating Ted Cruz, a sitting senator and a darling of his party, to he really hasn't been able to carry any momentum this entire race.
Nothing. Amy Klobuchar too has picked up nothing.
Yeah, and I don't see Cory Booker doing it either.
Gillibrand, same thing.
Nope, nothing.
And I think what happened with Robert O'Rourke was he was the shiny new object until Pete Buttigieg came in and just took that spotlight right away from him.
He got caught in a lot of double talk, especially where he's. I mean, it seems weird that a white guy would say, "I feel guilty being white."
Yeah.
You know, didn't that sound nuts?
Yeah, it
is
very
not.
odd.
It was.
very
He
odd.
wasn't.
You don't want to say
Well,
things that sound forced, you know?
Oh yes,
And,
they all will.
So Biden, Warren, Harris. Would you put anyone else in that mix right now? Of
I don't
who
think
would-
Bernie's completely out yet. He's still
well,
got his
he's number 2
following.
in the polls.
Potentially Buttigieg.
Yeah, I think.
You think Buttigieg?
I think you could narrow it down to about 6 or 7.
Would everyone
And
agree that
then-
probably if would you pick Biden right now as probably the likely candidate, or do you think it's still too early?
At this point, he's still the front runner.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean he's a shoo-in.
Yeah.
He's ahead
not
by
Dairy
15.
Queen.
Charlie Milhans, Derek Strazdas, thank you for joining us.
Thank
Bye
you.
bye.
That was a good episode.
Yeah.
It was nice.
Very good. Thank you both. I'm glad we only went with